So hello fellow Earthlings, this is Earthling 6455463728, and Russia and Saudi Arabia seem to have managed to get their goal of destroying U.S. shale, the U.S. shale economy. Now it's not 100% that this is going to happen, but everything seems to be pointing in that direction. For those of you who may not know, the U.S. shale industry really managed to oversupply the market and push down the price of oil. The price of oil at maybe 2014 or so was in excess of $100 a barrel. And of course, this was a really great price for U.S. shale, which had been evolving over time. And at such a high price, they were able to drill many different wells and to make the U.S. a net exporter of oil because of that. Barack Obama, actually, I think he, with Congress's help maybe, or maybe it was just him. I don't know if it was just based on an executive order. There was something in place that prevented oil from being exported from the U.S. But with the excess of oil that was being delivered by the U.S. shale industry, there was no point to that particular restriction. And Barack Obama removed it. And the U.S., not a significant amount, but was still able to export oil. As far as I hear, the quality of oil was not of the best that U.S. shale oil produces, but it was still something. And apparently there's different types of oil that are produced all over the world. And people who refine oil, they mix oil together in order to produce something that they can refine later on. So as far as not right now, but a while ago I looked up, oil from Venezuela, for example, doesn't even flow that well. It's really thick. So it needs to be mixed with a lot thinner, lighter oil. And as a result of that, Venezuela is suffering because of restrictions placed on it by the U.S. So there are problems now with respect to the oil that they need in order to mix with their thick stuff to get things going, to just to get to flow in pipes, for example. Anyway, Saudi Arabia had previously tried to kill U.S. shale, I think, by increasing the amount of oil that they produced in order to drive the price down and to put U.S. shale out of business, because they were losing market share, because the U.S. was producing oil. Not so much that they were exporting so much, but they probably weren't importing as much. And that, because surprisingly, the U.S. does not import really very much oil from Saudi Arabia at all. You know, given the stuff that happens in the Middle East, you would have thought it was a huge amount that they import, but it's a very small percentage, as a matter of fact. I can't remember what it was, but so small as to be less than 12%, something, a small number. Anyway, the whole thing started again because I guess Saudi Arabia failed initially in its initial try to kill U.S. shale, is that Russia produces lots of oil, and they're not a part of OPEC, but they work with Saudi Arabia in order to change the price as they see fit. Well, I suppose what happened was that Saudi Arabia wanted Russia to reduce the amount of oil, supposedly, because I'm wondering if this is not all part of some big scheme. Supposedly, Saudi Arabia wanted Russia to agree to reduce their oil production, which would increase demand for oil because the supply is diminished, and the price would increase because Saudi Arabia apparently is being struck. The fact that oil was so low because there's so much, because the US is pumping, was hitting Saudi Arabia. So they wanted to increase the price. And they asked Russia to join them and OPEC in limiting the supply so that the price would go up. Russia said no. And they said, no, we're just going to keep pumping. So Saudi Arabia said, really? Okay, well, we're going to just keep pumping too. They were upset. And with so much oil on the market between Saudi Arabia and Russia continuing to produce oil at a fairly high clip, that dropped the price of oil. Now, apparently, Saudi Arabia can produce oil, not with a very high profit, but they can still produce their oil, and Russia can as well, at a low price. And it's not going to drive them out of business. Unfortunately, shale oil needs a minimum price, let's say of around $40. But the price, of course, is much lower than that. And unfortunately, many of these companies were never doing that well since the last time Saudi Arabia tried to kill the industry. And many of them had already gone out of business. A lot of larger shale oil producers had swallowed up bigger ones. And most of the profits and the money that was around at the height of oil prices in 2014 and maybe 15, that was gone. All of the places in the US where there were lots of shale oil employees who were making lots of money and spending it, that was gone. So many of these companies were just taking advantage of the fact that they could get very cheap loans. And indeed, many of them might have eventually gone out of business at some point when their loan payments, they could not make the amount of money that they needed to in order to pay back on their loans. They might have been zombie companies. So this persistent low price threatens many of them. And as far as I hear, you can't just stop producing oil from an oil well, as at least for a US shale oil well, because the type of oil that US shale produces, if you stop the flow for any extended period of time, the makeup of the rock is such that it can permanently stop. So that's why I imagine a lot of companies continue to produce oil even though they weren't making money from it for a long period of time. So that being the case, companies that are making a loss and more of a loss as every day passes, they were just digging themselves in a deeper and deeper hole. Now the thing was that, and this is the interesting thing, that Donald Trump had said, okay, we're going to maybe put a tariff on Saudi Arabian oil because they have not done what they were supposed to get the price up. Now Saudi Arabia, they realized what was going on, that Donald Trump might actually do this, and they were trying to come to an agreement with Russia to limit the supply of oil that would increase the price. One of the things that I saw was that there was a certain limit in terms of production that needed to occur in order for the price of oil to go back up. And they didn't reach that agreement for that particular limit. So as a result of that, they kind of were able to eat their cake and have it too. Because for the one thing, Trump had wanted an agreement. They came to an agreement, but it wasn't a good enough agreement to help the shale industry. And for some reason, apparently Trump doesn't understand that. Of course, I don't think it just comes down to the fact that Trump doesn't seem to understand. I think that obviously there is some kind of relationship or leverage that Russia seems to have on Trump. So, with that said, he was threatening that he might put tariffs on Saudi Arabia, Saudi Arabian oil, and he doesn't have to anymore because they came to an agreement. It wasn't a good enough agreement to affect U.S. shale and increase the price of oil back to a place where it could sustain itself. So, given that, and of course, persistent reduced global demand for oil, it seems that one, many of the existing oil wells are probably going to go bad. And two, companies can't make much profit, if any at all, pumping oil at the prices that they're getting for it right now. Their loans are going to come true and they're going to be bankrupt. And it may so devastate the industry that other people, even when the price of oil goes back up significantly, may be very wary of restarting the industry given what happened. So it's not definite, it's not written in stone, but everything seems to point to that fact that this is the end of, for the most part, the U.S. shale oil and, well, even shale gas industry. We'll have to see what happens, but Saudi Arabia finally seems like they'll get what they want. Anyway, guys, you can wish me luck. You can like or unlike, comment, subscribe, and or share. Peace.